Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us for another Okio Labs webinar. My name is Michael from Okio Labs. Our guest this morning is a college biology professor with an infectious spirit and a truly insatiable appetite for discovering the very best ed tech. She has used her OkioCam to great effect when teaching her students remotely, and she's here today to talk about how recent discoveries in neuroscience have answered long-held questions regarding learning in the context of both fear and comfort. For what is guaranteed to be a very informative talk, let's have a warm welcome for Valerie Pennington. If you have any questions for Valerie, please type them in the chat because we will answer them in the Q&A section at the end of the talk.
All right.
Hello, Valerie.
Hello, Michael. Thank you so much for having me. This is absolutely fantastic. I'm so excited to be here. Are we
It's an
ready?
absolute pleasure. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Are we ready to jump into the brain here?
Yeah, I will hand it over to you, okay? I will talk to you soon, Valerie.
Sounds good. All right. First of all, thank you everyone for taking the time to come and listen to me talk about the brain today. I want to give a big shout out again to Michael and Okio Labs for sponsoring me. I absolutely love their document cameras. You're actually going to see one in action in my talk today. I want to let you know that this topic actually is going to be relevant regardless of the discipline you teach, the age of your students, and even whether or not you're teaching face-to-face or remote. I have sort of skewed this toward a remote delivery because that's where we are right now. I also want to let you know I'm not presenting my own research. I have been teaching human anatomy and physiology at Southwestern College for 24 years, and this just happens to be a topic that I am really, really interested in. I hope you are too, but I will be giving you some links and access to references at the end so you can find out more about this. But again, I'm not presenting my own research. I am really interested, though, in how we can take neuroscience and apply it to teaching, learning, and instructional design to help our students approach new challenges with curiosity rather than fear. So I don't need to tell you that teaching is hard. It's especially hard right now. It's hard for students. They are isolated. They don't have the support they usually do. And it's hard for faculty. It's hard for us. It's very, very difficult to deal with all of the challenges of the world and try to, maintain your teaching and keep some level of normal in your life. I believe my thesis today is that understanding a bit more how the brain works can help. And it can especially help to reduce the fear and anxiety that students face. And it can help faculty to make informed decisions about the types of learning environments that you are creating. So we're going to talk about the brain, obviously. The brain likes novelty and comfort, but too much comfort is boring. And too much novelty is frightening. So I want to talk about these two extremes for a second, because that's going to sort of get us to where we need to go in the limbic system. I don't think I need to tell you about the importance of the comfort zone. We're in the middle of a pandemic. So obviously everybody, I think by now, knows all about your own comfort zone, the things that you do to make yourself feel safe. Your brain craves this, and it especially craves it the crazier the external world gets. So you recede into your safe place with your tribe, right? They get you. You're comfortable there. You have your comfort foods. You binge watch the shows that you've seen before. Very interesting how many people rewatch shows because the predictability of the dialogue is very comforting. Now, there is nothing wrong with the comfort zone. We need it. But I want you to recognize that it's not a zone where a lot of growth or learning takes place. Okay, it's important, but this is not a big learning zone. The fear zone, on the other hand, is kind of the antithesis of that, right? So everything is strange, unfamiliar, it's foreign. Testing, judgment, the fear of, being exposed in social situations, the fear of humiliation, et cetera. This is not a zone where learning or growth occurs either, right? You're kind of in your flight or fight zone. So at the intersection of comfort and fear is what we call the challenge zone. And this is kind of the sweet spot. And when we talk about good stress, this is what we're talking about. This has been in the news a lot lately. Edutopia just did a whole piece on this in October, a couple months ago. And this is really where we're going here. And we've studied this for a long time. Some of the early papers date back, I found 1908. That's when we got the original stress performance curve. So you've seen this before, right? The relationship of stress and performance looks like this. It's a bell-shaped curve. If the stress level is too low, if you don't have enough stress, then the brain is bored, right? You're inactive, not interesting. As you add more and more stress, the brain gets excited. You get curious. Ooh, what's that? There is a level of stress and you get a peak performance somewhere. If you add more stress past that, things start to go downhill because then you get fatigue, you get anxiety, and more stress still, you get anger and panic, and everything kind of falls apart. Now, I think we can all agree that this is true. We've probably all experienced this. But I think this may be an oversimplification. Is it really just this simple? I'm going to say no, because that stress performance curve doesn't answer a lot of questions that I'm really interested in, like these. Why are some things pleasant under some circumstances, but not others? Why is it sometimes that being afraid can actually be fun? And the core here is, what's the difference between excitement and fear? Because in terms of your physiological response, they're the same. This is really a great example, tickling, okay? If you are with your special someone and you're in a great mood and everybody is happy and your special someone starts to tickle you, it's great, right? But if you're having a fight and your special someone starts tickling you, I guarantee it's not going to be fun. That is the same stimulus, but you're getting a completely different response, right? So that's kind of a good example of this. Other examples would be things like roller coasters, scary movies, and haunted houses. I love first dates, right? That's a classic example. Fear and excitement are causing all of these same physiological responses. So what really is the difference? As educators, it matters because we want our students to be excited. We don't want to scare the living daylights out of them. So to get at the answer to this question, we have to look at the brain itself, and specifically some structures that we refer to collectively as the limbic system. Some of you looking at this will know exactly what it is. Some of you maybe not. So just in case, if you take a head and a brain and you cut right down the middle, so you divide into right and left halves, and then you turn it so that you can see the side of the brain like this, where we have what's called a mid-sagittal section, and this is the left hemisphere of the brain. So the brain is divided into right and left hemispheres. And this image that I showed you a second ago, this is actually the right hemisphere of the brain. And to kind of give you some geography here, we've got the front, the top of the head, the back, and then the spinal cord coming down. I teach anatomy, so it's important for me that you know where these structures are. So the limbic system, okay, this is a set of structures deep in the brain. They're buried under the cortex, and they are responsible for emotions and motivation, especially dealing with things related to survival. So we've got things like anger and fear and pleasure and feeding and sex, all sort of bunched up in there. And also memory. There's a lot of memory function in the limbic system. So just a couple of structures here to give you some context. We've got the amygdala. The amygdala is responsible for basically how we learn to fear things. So fear is not innate. Fear is learned. And the amygdala has a big role to play there. It does a lot of other things too, but fear is important. The hippocampus, this is where memories are indexed and retrieved. So if you have damage to the hippocampus, you cannot form new long-term memories. The star of our show today, though, working with those two structures as well as some others, is the nucleus accumbens. This is a structure, we've studied it for about the past 40 years or so, and we know it's responsible for a lot of function having to do with reward and reward pathways. So it's studied especially with situations dealing with addiction, for example. These reward pathways, it's kind of reward and the behaviors that motivate you to achieve a reward. And for the longest time, we thought it was kind of like a switch. It was on or it was off. And what I want to show you today is it's a lot more complicated than that. And we're going to use rats as a model and look at some amazing rat research that was done with the nucleus accumbens. Okay, so this is a rat brain, and this is where the nucleus accumbens sits in the rat. And you can take microelectrodes and stimulate different parts of the nucleus accumbens. I know this sounds scary and maybe not so nice. You should know that we implant electrodes in brains. I'm not going to say all the time, but it's not an infrequent thing. We even use it for treatment for conditions like Parkinson's disease and severe epilepsy. It turns out the brain has no pain receptors. So once you implant those electrodes, there is no perception of pain in humans, and we assume that's true in rats. So just so you know, it sounds weird, but it's okay. So we stimulate the front of the nucleus accumbens in rats, and we see what happens. And what happens is the rat becomes curious. It has approach behaviors. It gets interested in the environment. When the researchers stimulate the back of the nucleus accumbens, you get kind of the reverse: avoidance, fear, and retreat. One little structure, two completely different functions, or so it seems. If you're wondering how they know what the rat is feeling, that's a reasonable question. So we have a rat mood chart. Here's a neutral rat. And what you do is you measure the angle of the rat, the length of the rat, and the height of the rat compared to the bottom that it's sitting on. And it's kind of cute, right? If you look at the two extremes, I think it makes a lot of sense. So this is the most upset rat. This is a rat in very defensive posture. It's got, access its teeth and claws. It's ready to fight for its life. This rat is completely relaxed. This is the happiest that a rat can be. Researchers actually call this a pancake rat. So those are the two extremes. I don't think it's that different from humans, really. I mean, I don't know. You be the judge, but yeah. Okay, so back to the nucleus accumbens. Stimulate the front, you get approach. Stimulate the back, and you get retreat, avoid. Okay? It's not that simple, though, not even in rats. So the researchers wondered, could the external environment, the environment that the rat is in, could that affect what the nucleus accumbens will do? So they made two different scenarios. Scenario one, we're going to call it rat nirvana. This is everything that rats love. It's warm. It's dark. It smells like the entire rat's family all together in a sauna. Doesn't that sound good? It sounds good if you're a rat. And they do the same experiment. When they stimulate the front of the nucleus accumbens, when the rat is in this rat nirvana, you get actually the same response, that approach behavior. But if you stimulate the back of the nucleus accumbens now, you get approach. What's that? That's interesting. Amazing, right? Okay, hold on. We have another scenario, rat nightmare. Okay, just to be clear, the rats were not tortured. It's just that the rats were placed in an environment where everything was unpredictable. Mainly, they adjusted lights and sound. There was no pattern to it, so the lights and the noise would change all the time. So the rats are on edge, okay? They're upset. They're just sort of waiting for the sky to fall, if you will. Now we stimulate the front of the nucleus accumbens for rats in a rat nightmare scenario, and you get avoidance behavior. You get fear and retreat. And when you stimulate the back of the nucleus accumbens, again, you get fear and retreat just like before. So if you're keeping track at home, making a little table like this is what we've got. A regular environment where the front gives you moving toward and the back gives you retreat. In rat nirvana, it doesn't matter where you stimulate. The rat is curious. The rat is moving toward. The rat is interested. And in a rat nightmare, it doesn't matter where you stimulate. You get fear. Now, this is pretty amazing. And maybe you're thinking, well, it's a rat. Well, we see this in humans too. So in babies, it's very easy to observe. Babies fear strangers when they're in an unfamiliar environment. But if they're in a familiar environment, or if at least one parent is present, that same stranger is usually perceived with curiosity and interest. So it comes down to predictable fear. Fear that we can predict, or fear that occurs when we feel safe. That kind of fear in humans activates the nucleus accumbens. In a way, the brain is saying, it's okay to be afraid. We're safe. That's huge. Predictable fear is actually fun. Remember that nucleus accumbens is involved in the reward pathway. And people can actually become addicted to this sort of sensation. We call them adrenaline junkies, right? Your limbic system is fired up. That means you feel so alive. You notice every detail of your environment, but you're not actually worried that you're going to die. And that seems to be the key difference. So if you're wondering, what does this have to do with education? I am so glad you asked. It is our job as educators to challenge our students, to get them out of their comfort zone so that learning can take place, right? To get into that challenge zone. But we want students to approach these new challenges with curiosity and not with fear. So how do you do that? What are the nuts and bolts of this? Here it is. You want to create a scaffold in your course of comfort and predictability. Again, this is true whether you're teaching face-to-face or online. This base of comfort where the students know to some extent what's coming. And then within that scaffold, you build new knowledge. You expose them to new things. You get them to try new skills, things that are scary, but it's within this comfort scaffold. So in an online setting, here are some examples of how you could do that. Keeping your structural components consistent is a great way to build predictability and comfort. So for example, your new module launches every Monday at 8 a.m. All assessments are due on Sundays at 11:59 p.m. Every single unit is going to contain, these different types of activities, assessments, etc. This is a scaffold of predictability. So week to week or module to module, your students know what is going to happen, what's going to be expected of them, and when. Every module, if it's structured the same, again, you have that comfort factor of predictability. So in my class, I keep it really simple. I've got learning objectives, the checklist, that's kind of where they spend most of their time. So they have all the things that I want them to do in the order I want them to do them. So here are your readings, then you're going to watch this video, then we're going to have this activity, then we're going to have a discussion, whatever it is. It's the same every single week. And then the helpful hints is where they have their prompts for discussion boards, study guides, all of those kinds of things. So the week to week structure doesn't change. It's not like I'm throwing out a new deadline that is unusual for the semester. We've been talking a lot in education, especially lately, about humanizing the online experience. And this is where that fits in. The humanization of your online class plays a huge role in comfort level. The students want to know you. They want to see you. They want video. They want interactive stuff. And to think about that as you're creating your everything, the course itself, as well as your activities and assessments, will help. This is the biggest piece of all, I think, in terms of this comfort scaffold. Trust. Learning relationships start with trust, and trust is built when the students believe two simple fundamental things. One is that the instructor cares about them and their success. And the second thing is that the instructor repeatedly demonstrates follow through. That is, you do what you say you're going to do, that you test them on the material that you said you would, and that you allocate points based on the priorities that you establish. And another big one here is preparing them for those high stakes assessments by giving them lots of low or no stakes assessments. So here's a great example. Oh, look, it's an OkioCam T. This is one of my colleagues who teaches organic chemistry, and he uses this document camera to use work with his OChem students with molecular models. And it's absolutely great for that. And here what's happening is the instructor is demonstrating and they're practicing. The students have the same molecular model kits at home. And the assessments are going to be variations on what they are practicing now. So you have low or no stakes assessments. You have the ability for students are building molecules, they're asking questions, they're kind of driving, their own learning with their own curiosity. No stakes. They can make mistakes, they can be wrong, they can, do what they might consider stupid things and it's okay. They're comfortable doing that. But later, when they have their assessment, it will be very similar to this. And even though the assessment itself might be stressful, the students are comfortable because they've done it before. So getting back to this challenge zone idea, if you think about it, the entire educational experience is very fear-based. We are constantly asking students to do things they've never done before. That's the point. And we're testing them and we're making them do stuff, group presentations, all that stuff is inherently scary. The brain is like, I don't know about this. I don't like this. But the instructor can control the comfort side of this equation to a great degree. And that's the thing to keep in mind. The consistency of your organization, building this trust, giving low and no stakes assessments, that's going to get you here. And that's going to get your students fearlessly asking questions and driving their own learning. I think instructors forget, it's easy to forget, asking questions is a huge risk for students. They are terrified of looking stupid, terrified of what their peers will think. So if you have this scaffold of comfort, more students are going to be able to get over that fear barrier to really get involved, ask the questions, and truly participate. They'll be also, more welcome to get feedback. They'll be able to self-analyze and reflect better, all the things that we really want. All of those things happen in the challenge zone. And again, remember what's happening here is the brain is saying, it's okay to be afraid. We're safe. That's key. So in summary, there is a lot of evidence that in humans as well as rats, the limbic system response to stimuli is not fixed. It is context dependent. So novel challenges that occur when we feel safe are perceived as interesting, something to move toward. But novel challenges that occur when you do not feel safe, when you do not know what's coming, when everything is unpredictable, those are perceived as negative. Creating challenging experiences within a framework of safety is going to motivate your students to do so much more than they would otherwise be capable of. And it will build their self-esteem and their resiliency. And basically what you're doing is, by creating this comfort scaffold, you can encourage them to ask questions, to be wrong, and to handle embarrassment. And that is going to serve them not only in your class, but in life. Those are just huge life skills. So if you have a phone with a QR reader or a camera, you can scan this QR code, and that's going to take you to a website. If you don't have it, don't worry, because I have an alternative here. But I created a Padlet. If you've not seen what Padlet is, it's kind of like a virtual discussion cork board kind of a thing. And I would like to know, what are some things that you either have tried or are thinking about relating to creating more comfort as a base for your classes, whether face-to-face or online. If you don't have a phone nearby, you can go to penguinprof.com. And if you click in the top right, the very top menu there, it's Penguin Prof EDU. And if you click that, this is where you'll go. I have some resources for educators here on the splash page. If you scroll down, you'll see this. Hopefully that's familiar. And that is where you can access the slides that I just showed, some references if you want to learn more. I have articles, I have some videos. So if you've never heard of the limbic system before, I have some references, as well as some scholarly journal articles if you're really into it already, if you're a neuroscientist, and also the link to access the Padlet that I just showed. And again, I want to thank Okio Labs for sponsoring me today. I did a review of their document camera, the one that you saw in the slides. I just love it. You can get in touch with me all over the web. I am the Penguin Prof, and my Penguin Prof YouTube channel is where you'll find an ed tech playlist, where I have lots of videos for educators to help people transition to these incredible times that we are in. So I do hope that, let's see if I can click out of this so that we can have some time for questions. But again, please get in touch online, and we can chat there as well. All right, let's see.
Hey, Valerie.
Yes.
Thank you so much for that talk. I knew it would be good, but it actually probably exceeded my expectations. And I can see We have some positive messages in the chat as well.
Okay.
Um,
Let's see. Oh, yes.
Casey, thank you so much for the positive message. Casey says that was absolutely excellent. Thank you so much. Amazing presentation. Valerie, I know OkioCam from your YouTube
Yes.
video.
That's what we want to hear, right?
Popular video. So to all the attendees, if you have any questions, please type them in the Q&A section, and we will do our best to answer them all now. So we have one question from an anonymous attendee. This person asks, I am always trying to learn. How can I create my own learning nirvana? So maybe this person's referring to
Ooh.
when you were talking about the rat nirvana, how the scientists created the positive nirvana. How can this person create his or her own learning nirvana?
You know, it's funny. I think that this pandemic has really allowed all of us to kind of focus in on our comfort zone. And like, just me personally, I have realized, since I'm not going to campus, I need to create a dedicated space in my home so that I can focus. So when I come to sit down, my brain is ready to learn, to work. I don't, do anything else in that space. I think that's really important. I also think it's important to know your own like circadian rhythm. When is your brain most receptive to learning new complicated things? So when do you study, basically? And, kind of honor that. I think when we are in this situation all at home, that in some ways is easier to figure out when works for you and use that so that, when you're doing hard mental work with your brain, work when you are most alert. I have a mid-afternoon slump, and I will either take a power nap. I'm a huge fan of the nap. By the way, there is tons of neuroscience research that shows that power naps improve learning, memory, recall. I mean, everything. Naps to nap. That's my number one. If I can't nap for some reason, I get my heart rate up. I'll go and do some exercise or something, because I try not to schedule like big talks or, big tasks for that time of day. I try not to teach during that time because I know I'm kind of sluggish. So kind of, I guess, use this time to learn about your own body, learn, your own, best time of day, best learning environment. And you can sort of create that as best you can. So, yeah, I think we're all kind of doing that right now. Yeah, that is a great question.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm a really big fan of naps as well. I'm a big fan. So we have another
Especially
question
now,
here.
your time zone right now. Oh my gosh.
I know. It's pretty early for us, but Sharon has a question for us. She writes, because a lot of students are virtual learners right now, do you think this knowledge is as useful to us? Obviously, every student has a different situation at home. So obviously as a teacher, you can't create the same learning environment for all the students because now a lot of them are virtual learners. Yeah. Is it as useful for us?
Oh, I think absolutely. I think actually it's more important than ever. And one thing that I see a lot of our faculty doing is taking time to do check-ins. People, they call it temperature checks. I think that's brilliant, just given our situation. And the students have the option of it, it can be anonymous or not, but they do like a quick survey. It could be as simple as a mood survey. And if the students want to talk more about what's going on for them, or they're having some sort of issue that's come up, there's the option to do that, but they don't have to do that. I think really knowing that we are all under levels of stress that for many people are just unprecedented, we need to honor that. I think it's important for students, faculty, administrators, staff, everybody needs to just take a breath if something happens and you kind of feel your blood pressure going up. It's like, okay, relax. You don't know what this other person has just been through. The best way to deal with that, I think, whether you're face-to-face or remote, is to ask your students, and let them know that you're there to listen. And if they need resources, that, make sure you are sort of a hub of resources. I have, all the links On our college, my college is amazing in this regard, and we have links. If students suddenly become homeless, or they are having some sort of food shortage, they need legal advice, free legal help. So I have that list so that when students come, I always have resources to share. But
Okay.
I would say definitely it's more important than ever to check in, see how they're doing, and just acknowledge that no one is at the top of their game right now.
Yeah, absolutely. That's some great advice. Great
Yeah.
question as well. Thank you so much,
Yes.
Sharon.
Yes.
So another question here from another anonymous attendee. Do you think students learning remotely sometimes get too comfortable and dragged their learning process?
Probably.
Yeah, you think
Probably. I
so?
mean, you know, I think some students are really thriving in this environment and some are really
Mm-hmm.
struggling. And when you think about it, that's kind of always true. So I've taught online, asynchronously online, since 2012, I believe. And people would always ask me, do students do better or worse? And I say, you can't really answer that, because for some students, the online environment, they just thrive. And some students just can't do it. And I would say it depends heavily on the subject matter, the teacher. The teacher is
Yeah.
probably the most important, right?
Yeah.
And kind of where the student is at in terms of their own, development. So, I mean, I took a sabbatical to prepare my own online class. So I teach a general biology class fully online, pre-pandemic. And I spent a year, not only preparing my own, materials, but I took a ton of online classes myself. And because I grew up when there was no online ed. And I found that some classes were actually, one of the classes I took, I'm going to say, is one of the best classes I've ever had in my entire life. And I took some that were just horrifying. I tried to learn Python, and I was good for about, how far did I get? Like 3 or 4 weeks. And I'm doing the homework and everything's making sense. And then all of a sudden I hit a wall. And it was like, I felt like, did I miss a week? Like, how is it that I was just doing great? And then I crashed and burned. Now, it wasn't required. It was something I just chose to do. So I wasn't motivated enough to kind of work through that. So I quit. I just quit. I was like, you know what? I need a person. I need someone to sit with me and look at this and help me understand what I'm missing. So, I mean, yeah, I think some students are going to get too comfortable. Some are just going to figure out ways to adapt. I think it depends on their home situation, how much the parents are helping, if it's a parental. So yeah, I mean, I think what I'm hearing is it's just all over the map. And, we're trying to kind of get everybody, into the fold and help everybody along. But the truth is, we were obviously so unprepared for this. And there are plenty of school districts that they just don't have the technology, for example. It just doesn't exist. And there's really nothing you can do about that.
Okay. Thank you so much. Some great info. Do we have any further questions from any attendees? If you have one, just type it into the Q&A section.
This is great. I love my naps too. I don't know. Naps, maybe it's age. Naps used to be like a luxury, and now it's like, I really need my nap. I mean, it can be just 15, 20 minutes, but it's a real centering time, whether you actually fall asleep or not, but just giving your brain that quiet space now, especially getting away from the screen. Like, we're in screens all day long. Just get away. So,
personally, 15 minutes is not long enough for me. I need at least an hour.
Yeah.
But maybe I'm just a little bit more lazy. I'm not sure.
No, I think everybody's different. It's, they say though, you should never go beyond a sleep cycle. So a normal sleep cycle, like at night, is 90 minutes. And if you do that in the middle of the day, you're going to be, you're going to feel pretty bad.
We all know, I'm sure we all know what that feels like. It feels horrible.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
You regret taking the nap.
Minutes. I'm sorry.
So you regret taking the nap if you nap for too long, you know? You wish you didn't do it.
You do. Yeah.
So
it makes you more sluggish.
Another question here, Valerie, if you have some time.
Of course.
What's your ideal environment for learning like?
I guess they mean for me personally.
Yeah. How do you learn best?
I learn best in a completely quiet environment. when I'm doing serious work, I don't do music. I do music for other things. But when I really need to like focus, total silence, I need a extremely clean learning space. I don't like stuff everywhere. So I'm kind of a minimalist in that way. And I have to be mentally on. So for me, like I'm a morning person. So I do all of my hardest tasks in the morning. I always record my YouTube videos in the morning, for example. And what's interesting about YouTube and what I've learned is that I do all the prep work. It takes a long time. I actually have a video on how I make my YouTube tutorials if you're interested, but I sit down and I usually do it all in 1 or 2 takes. And if it goes 3 or 4, I quit, because it's just not the way my brain works. I don't script anything. I'm not a scripter. That does not work. I have tried it, but for me, it sounds awful. You can just tell that I'm reading. I can't do a relaxed script reading. So I do it just all kind of, I mean, obviously I've prepared it, but if I can't get it right the first few times, I'll just quit. And even though I've set up all my cameras and my lights and everything, I'll just be like, today's not the day. So I'm very aware of that. And sometimes I'm just not on my game, and it's better to just stop and do something else. I'll do chores, I'll clean the house, I'll do whatever, and come back when my brain is fully engaged. I don't try to force it, if that makes sense. If I've got to study something, I force it just doesn't work. I feel like your brain can just sort of shut down. But I am a huge fan of lots of repetition, studying with questions. I create questions for myself, and active recall. So it's spaced repetition over time, using questions to make me draw out the answer from my brain. I don't rewrite my notes. I'm not a big highlighter. I'm all about the questions. So taking the content, turning it into a question, and then quizzing myself. This is what I encourage my students to do. And that's what the neuroscience is pointing to for long-term recall. That's the way to go. So.
Okay. That was a very thorough answer. I'm sure that answers the person's question.
And then some, right?
Yeah.
I say, you know what? I'm a big fan of going with with how your brain naturally likes to learn. So I think one thing we can do maybe in closing is to find out the best way our students learn, help them to find that out for themselves, have them explore, learning in different ways, different times of day. Do you learn better? Do you remember more if you eat like a big protein meal, or you eat a lot of carbs, or a mixture? Or, how does caffeine affect you? How does, if you have a drink of alcohol the night before, what does that do to your learning the next day? And just like keep a log and figure that out. And I think that's one of the best things we can do throughout our lives is kind of work with what our brain does best. Don't fight your own brain, that's just, you're not going to win. So that's what I would say. Yeah.
Valerie, we won't keep you for too much longer. I will just read out another positive comment that somebody typed out. Somebody says, Valerie, please give us another webinar for teaching us how to make good YouTube videos. But you have that YouTube video that you just mentioned.
I do, actually. And you know what? I do recommend that. So if you go to the Penguin Prof YouTube channel, by the way, this is not, I feel this might come off badly, but I'm posting all these videos. They're all ad-free. I'm not making any money off of this pandemic, just to be clear, but I'm doing a ton of ed tech videos to help faculty out. But how I make my YouTube tutorials, that video took forever, but it's like the number 1 question that I get from faculty. It's like, it is a process. Everybody has their own way of doing it. And this is just what works for me after, I've had my channel for like 10 years, but I got serious about it about 5 years ago. And it's just been incredibly rewarding. And that's how I met Michael. And, people reach out and they're like, hey, do you want to play with us? And the collaborative stuff that we've been able to do is just amazing.
Yeah, we love that video. Thank you so much for making it again.
Oh, it was just Michael. I hope you're okay with the title. I was kind of like, I'm very straightforward. So the title of my video was A Good Cheap Document Camera.
Yeah.
But I mean,
think it's fair.
It is, I think, for the money. And I mean, it's incredible. I mean, it is incredible quality. And that's all you care about.
Thank you.
So yeah, we just love it. We just love it. So
Thank you.
Yeah.
So just one last question.
Certainly.
But, I think you alluded to it, or the answer. You alluded to the answer. But Sharon asks, so do you think it's okay to quit during an ongoing project? I always feel bad about myself for quitting. So I think that was asked when you were talking about how you make YouTube videos, but if you don't get a good take within 4 takes or so, you just scrap it.
I don't necessarily scrap it permanently. I scrap it for the day for sure. I do actually have a stack of videos in a folder that I have started. I have put so much time into it, but I just can't finish them for one reason or another. I used to be of the mind that you just don't quit. You just muscle through. But with experience and age, and I've now gone through, some medical crises, life, I have learned that sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is quit. I say, don't quit without doing a real hard analysis of why you're making the choice. I think that, and get advice from other people, people that you trust. I also believe in that. Don't do it just really suddenly. Don't just get frustrated and quit. That I don't do. But take a step back, and assess, is this really worth it? Is this really what I want to be doing right now? Life is so short. And, make sure that you're spending your energy and your time doing things that matter, because truthfully, time is the most valuable thing we have. I mean, time is something that you never get back. You can always make, if you lose money, you can always make more, you'll figure it out. But that time, you never get back. So I am a big fan of assessing, figuring out where is your, time and energy best spent, and go with that. And yeah, I've quit plenty of things. I've quit things in my professional life, and I've had bosses and people say to me, you are going to regret this for the rest of your life. And you know what? Never. Ever. It wasn't right for me.
Yeah, you have to know.
Yeah. So.
Okay, excellent. So thank you to all the attendees for joining us today. And thank you once again, Valerie, for the really excellent and insightful talk. It was an absolute pleasure to listen to it.
Oh, thank you so much, Michael. Thank you guys for having me, and Okio Labs. I just admire what you're doing. I just have to say, having these products at prices that faculty can actually afford is huge. There's a lot of people who are out there doing price gouging, and it's just disgusting. And what you guys are doing, actually stepping up and helping people to, get the job done that needs to be done out there. Thank you for what you're doing. And thank you to all the attendees. I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference, and I hope to see you on the Padlet, and get in touch. Find me, Penguin Prof. I'd love to chat some more.
Yep, chat some more. Thank you for the kind words, Valerie.
Thank you.
Have a good
so
day.
Much. You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Talk soon.
Okay.